1971 Roadrunner. Coming through with totally new styling. It looks like fun. It drives like fun. And it still goes beep beep. Beep beep. The only place to catch a Roadrunner is at your Plymouth dealers.
Hey folks, Dad here with Elevation Diecast Racing. Welcome to Racing in the Pass Lane 2024 bracket number 1 race. This race will be contested on Mile High Raceway, and we are going to bring to you the first 32 entries making it on this side of the bracket as we go through and race to see who will be this bracket winner. Part 1 of the stock race here at Elevation Diecast Racing. The big three: Ford, Chrysler, and Chevrolet. So sit back, relax, get you a Coca-Cola and a smile, and we're going to get up to the top with the first race. Again, I want to thank everybody who sent in a car from around the world: Germany, Finland, Canada, and right here in our backyard in the US of A. Thank you for participating in Racing in the Pass Lane 2024. This is going to be one exciting event. And before we get up top, I'm going to take you through the bracket. On the left side and down the right side of the bracket. Once again, I want to thank everybody for sending in a car. Without you guys, we just are racing cars in a garage. You guys bring this channel to life, and we thank you for it. Without any further ado, let's get Racing in the Pass Lane 2024 underway. In lane number 1, in the 61 Chevy Impala driven by Scale Racing Channel, he'll be taking on the 64 qualifier from Rusty Rods Racing in the 71 Dodge Charger. Let's see who takes it down the lane first. Wow. 2046 and 2127. We'll switch them up. 2046 is the time to beat. 2048 sends the Scale Racing Channel to round number 2. Next up in lane number 1, qualifying number 33 in his 67 Shelby Mustang, Bobby D's Lakeside Raceway, taking on the number 32 qualifier in his first of 2 Chargers from DXP Diecast Racing. Let's see who gets down the lane first. Charger with a 6.4. Let's switch them up. 2064 is the time to beat. 2065 sends DXP on to round number 2. Next up, staged and ready in lane number 1, qualifying number 48 in the Hot Wheels Charger driver, Craigster Sr. from Hot Nuts Racing, taking on the number 17 qualifier in the Maximus Charger Fast and Furious. It's Flips Racing. Let's see who takes it down the lane first. Maximus Charger 67 to 89 will switch lanes. 2067 is the time to beat. And Flip with a 2061 moving on to round number 2. Next up in the block, staged and ready in lane number 1, qualifying number 16 overall. It is once again DXP Diecast Racing in his second Charger, taking on the 49th overall qualifier from 4114 Racing in his 50th anniversary Mustang. Let's see who gets there. Charger with a 2061 to 89 will switch lanes. 2061 is the time to beat. And the Charger with a 7.2 will be moving on to the next round. Okay, next in the blocks, staged and ready in lane number 1, qualifying 56th overall. It's Team Kamikaze in the 67 Camaro, taking on the number 9th overall qualifier in the 50th anniversary Mustang. It is Blue Line Racing. Let's see who gets down the lane first. The classic Mustang versus Camaro. Mustang 2055 to 11. We'll switch them up. 2055 is the time to beat. And 2055, as steady as she goes, to round number 2. Okay, staged and ready. Up next, in lane number 1, from Flips Racing, it is his second Maximus Charger, taking on a 56 Chevy. Driver is Arlo Racing. Let's see who gets down the lane first. Good race, 70 to 78. And just as a side note, any car that has been disqualified in the race will not exceed past round number 1. Win, lose, or draw. Maximus Charger with a 2070 is the time to beat. And the Maximus Charger running a 2066 will be moving on to the next round. Next up, staged and ready in lane number 1 is the 67 Shelby driven by Slandman Customs. He'll be taking on the 25th overall qualifier in the Fast and Furious Roadrunner from Your Nightmare Racing. The Shelby qualifying number 40 overall. Who gets down the lane first? Roadrunner 69 to 78. We'll switch them up. 2069 is the time to beat. And the Roadrunner will take care of business, moving on to the next round. Okay, next up, staged and ready in lane number 1, qualifying 57th overall from the Steel City Mafia. He is driving the Greenwood Corvette. He'll be taking on the number 8th qualifier overall in his Fast and Furious number 2 Charger. It is Northern Roads Racing. Let's see who gets down the lane first. Charger out front and stays out front, 6'3 to 20. Let's switch them up. 2063 is the time to beat. And 2061 ran good enough to go to round number 2. Heading on over to the other side of the bracket in lane number 1, qualifying 4th overall from Bobby D's Lakeside Raceway, racing in his 70 Fast and Furious Charger. He'll be taking on the 61st overall qualifier E67 diecast in his 1967 Chevy Camaro. Ooh, 2054. Let's switch them up to a 2125. 2054 is the time to beat. And the Charger with a 5.6 to 2112 will be moving on to round number 2. Okay, next up, staged and ready. Seems to happen in these big races at least once. We have qualifying 36th overall in lane number 1, driving the 75 Corvette, In Search of Speed diecast. Also qualifying 29th overall in lane number 2 from In Search of Speed diecast, the 79 F-150. Sorry, man, that's just how the numbers fell. Anyway, my vote is In Search of Speed diecast going to round number 2. Guaranteed. Good race, 67 to 73. Let's switch them. I've never seen a stock F-150 do that, especially a 79. Pretty remarkable. 2067 is the time to beat. And the muscle truck 2069 moves him into round number 2 for In Search of Speed diecast. All right, next up, staged and ready in lane number 1, qualifying 45th overall from Slandman Customs. It's the 1968 Mercury Cougar and he'll be taking on the number 20 qualifier overall. It's Kai from Umiri Racing in his 74 Coronet Taxi from Tomika. Let's see who gets down the lane first. Taxi out ahead and stays there. 71 to 86 will switch lanes. 2071 is the time to beat. And Kai with a nice run. 2068 in his Taxi. Moving on to round number 2. Good job, kiddo. All right, up next in lane number 1, qualifying 13th overall, is the Spectra Flame Roadrunner from the Fast and Furious packs, driven by Scale Racing Channel. He'll be taking on the 52, qualifying number 52 overall from Variant Skunk Works in his 1968 Ford Mustang. Let's see who gets down the lane first. Oh, the Roadrunner. Plymouth showing out here. 2057 to 93. Let's switch them up. All right, lanes are switched up. 2057 is the time to beat. Wow, Roadrunner getting out. 56 to 2100. Scale Racing moving another car into the next round. Next up, staged and ready in lane number 1, qualifying 53rd overall from 4114 Racing in the 1973 Gran Torino. He'll be taking on the number 12th qualifying overall from Milestone Racing in his Fast and Furious 1970 Charger. Who gets down there first? Oh, the Charger. 2065 to 04, we'll switch them up. For what it's worth, that Torino is sweet. One of the nicer ones I've seen. 2065 is the time to beat. And the Charger pushing forward with a 2060, moving on to round number 2. All right, next up, staged and ready in lane number 1, qualifying 44th overall in his 67 Shelby from Pure Racing, facing qualifying 21st overall, but is overweight and will be disqualified from advancing, Mrs. BFG in her 69 Mustang. Let's see who takes it. Mustang 2066 and run number 2. 2088, 2067, and since a disqualified car can't win the race, Pure Racing is going to be moving on in this instance. And that verse will be repeated in this race. In lane number 1, qualifying 37th overall from Arlo Racing, it is his 80s Chevy Stalker. He'll be taking on the 28th qualifier overall from Hot Rod Customs in his Fast and Furious Charger. Let's see who takes it down the lane first. Good race. 2067 to 74. We'll switch them up. 2067 is the time to beat. And the Charger taking care of business. 2068 moves him to the next round. And in the last race of round number 1, in lane number 1, qualifying 5th overall from Bavarian Diecast Racing in his 1970 Charger, he'll be taking on Rusty Rods Racing, qualifying 60th overall in his 71 Mach 1 Mustang. Let's see who gets down the lane first. Wow, Charger getting out. 2064 to a 2110. 2064 is the time to beat. And the Charger with a 2059, moving him on to round number 2 for Bavarian Diecast. And here is a look at the next round. I'm starting to see a theme here. Couple exceptions to the rule, but nevertheless, it looks like the Fast and Furious are dominating this race. And before we get to that, we're going to show you what Slamman Customs can offer you as a new racer, an existing racer, or just a fan of the hobby. Check it out. All right, we're back. And make sure you go check out slammancustoms.com. He's got another store going up, or a store going up in his area. So get a hold of him. Go check him out. It's going to be exciting. I may have to take a 3-day hiatus to go check it out myself. All right, staged and ready. Let's get round number 2 underway in lane number 1 from DXP Diecast. It's his Charger taking on Scale Racing's 61 Impala. This ought to be a good race. Things are heating up at Racing in the Pass Lane. Wow, good race. 51 to 64. We'll switch lanes. 2:05.1 is the time to beat. Wow, that Impala getting out and staying out. 48 to 64 moves Scale Racing to round number 3. All right, staged and ready. In lane number 1, another shot for DXP with his second Charger, taking on Flip's second Maximus. This should be really good. Who gets down there first? Wow, Charger, 2:06.3 to 6.5. We'll switch them up. Flip needs to beat a 2:06.3. Good race. 2:06.4 won't get it done, and DXP moving on to round number 3. All right, next race staged and ready. In lane number 1, Flip's second chance to stay in it in his first Maximus, taking on Blue Line Racing's 50th Mustang. Let's see who gets down there first. Close race, 60 to 63. Let's switch them up. Flip trying to keep Low Country Diecast Racing League on the board. 2:06.0 is the time to beat. Good race. Oh, 58 to 64 moves Blue Line on to round number 3. All right, next up in lane number 1 from Northern Road Racing in his second Charger, and it's lane number 2 in the Orange Roadrunner from Your Nightmare Racing. Who gets down the lane first? Good race. 59 to 67. We'll switch lanes. 2:05.9. Northern Roads with the advantage. That is the time to beat. Wow. 64 does not beat a 59, and Northern Roads finding himself going to round number 3. All right, good matchup here in lane number 1. It is the 1970 Fast and Furious Charger driven by Bobby D's Lakeside Raceway, taking on the 1979 Ford F-150 driven by In Search of Speed Diecast. Good race. 58 to 65. We'll switch them up. 2:05.8 is the time to beat. Close race. 60 to 63. And Bobby D finding himself in round number 3. Next up, staged and ready in lane number 1. Kai from Umi Re-Racing in his 74 Dodge Corvette, taking on the 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner from Scale Racing Channel. Who gets down there first? Tomika versus Mattel. Good race. Tomika keeping up with him. 2:05.7 to 6.5. We will switch the lanes. 2:05.7 is the time to beat. Good race. 56 to 62. Scale Racing moving on to round number 3. And a very valiant effort by that youngster there. All right, next up, staged and ready in lane number 1 from Pure Racing in his 67 Ford Shelby, taking on Milestone Racing's 1970 Charger. Let's see who takes it down the lane first. Wow, 2062 to 86. We'll switch the lanes. 2062 is the time to beat. Charger just sailing on by with a 2058 to 84, moving Milestone Racing to round number 3. And for the last race in round number 2, we got a pair of Chargers up in the blocks. In lane number 1 from Bavarian Diecast Racing. He's actually in lane number 2. And in lane number 1 is Hot Rod Customs with his Charger. Let's see who gets down the lane first. Wow, pretty good race. 2063 to 65. Bavarian Diecast with the advantage. 2063 is the time to beat. Wow, 5-8 from Bavarian, moving him to round number 3. Moving right along to round number 3 in lane 1, 61 Impala from Scale Racing Channel, taking on DXP's second Charger. Who gets down there first? Good race. Impala pulling out 52 to 65. Let's switch those lanes. I can hear the eBay bells ringing now. Impala in lane number 2. Good race. 51 to 65. Moves Scale Racing Channel to the next round. Next car's up in the blocks. 50th anniversary Mustang in lane 1 from Blue Line Racing, taking on Northern Roads Racing's second Charger. In 3, 2, 1. Good race, 59 to 60. Wow, it's close. Can Northern Roads pull off the upset? He needs a 2059 or greater. Oh, 58 to 60. What a close race. Oh, my Lanta. But Blue Line moving to the next round. Next up, another classic matchup. It's the Battle of the Mopar. In lane number 1, Bobby D's Lakeside Raceway with his Charger, taking on Scale Racing Channel's Spectra Flame Roadrunner. Who gets down the lane first? What a race. 57 to 58. Wow. 257 and greater than 1 will do it for Bobby D. Or else Scale Racing's moving himself into the semifinals with his second car. Wow, and he's going to do it. Look at that. 256 to 60. That is an upset. That Roadrunner finding another gear to eliminate the 4th qualifier overall. What a race. And in the last race of round number 3, Battle of the Chargers, we've got Bavarian Diecast Racing taking on Hot Rods Racing. No, Milestone Racing and Bavarian Diecast Racing. So Milestone in lane 1, Bavarian in lane number 2. Let's go. Good race. 58 to 64. Milestone with the advantage. Another upset in the making. 2058 is the time to beat. 2061 will not do it, and Milestone Racing finds himself moving into the semis. And here is a look at semifinals on the left side of the bracket and the semifinals on the right side of the bracket. Semifinal time. Scale Racing Channel in lane number 1 taking on Blue Line Racing in lane number 2. In 3, 2, 1. Good race. 49 to 57. Let's switch them up. 2049 is the time to beat. Good race. 49 to 54. And Scale Racing Channel moving to the final race of bracket number 1. Now the question is, can Milestone Racing bridge the gap and keep Scale Racing from facing himself in the finals in this bracket? We're about to find out in 3, 2, 1. Wow, what a race. 56 to 61. We'll switch those lanes. 2:05.6 is the time to beat. Wow, 2:05.7 to 6:2 will send Scale Racing to the final race. I bet you didn't see that coming. Scale Racing Channel versus Scale Racing Channel in the final race of bracket number 1. But first, let's see who takes number 3rd spot on the podium. Milestone Racing in lane number 2, taking on Blue Line Racing in lane number 1. Good race. 59 to 62. Blue Line Racing up. 2:05.9 is the time to beat. Wow, 61 to 62. So Blue Line Racing will be your 3rd place winner of bracket number 1. And that brings us to the final race. Wow. Oh my Lanta. Scale Racing Channel in lane number 1 and 2. Impala versus the Roadrunner. Well, which one's faster on Mile High? In 3, 2, 1. First one to win 3. 2:05.2. Impala up 1-0. Run 2. Wow, close race, 53 to 56. We'll switch them again. 1961 Chevy Impala taking on the 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner. Mattel Fast and Furious, race number 3 for the final in bracket 1. And the Impala will get the Roadrunner 2:05.1 to 5:7. Which will make Scale Racing Channel and the 1961 Impala your overall winner for bracket number 1 for Racing in the Past Lane 2024 stock race. And coming in second, Scale Racing Channel's Roadrunner coming in spot number 2 and in spot number 3 in the 50th anniversary Ford Mustang driven by Blue Line Racing. What a spectacular start to the first half of this race. This is something else. What a bunch of fast cars we have sent down this track. Some upsets and history being made here today as we go on to see who is going to be the winner of bracket 2. Again, I want to thank everybody for participating in this race, for sending your car in. These are some of the fastest cars in the world of diecast racing today, bar none. Congratulations out to Brandon at Scale Racing Channel. We'll see him in the final race after bracket 2. And we will see you very soon for that one. Another exciting race coming up from Mile High Raceway. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next race. And if your car isn't fast, at least it'll look good on the shelf. Have a great night.